My sister struck me in front of 200 guests at her wedding because I wouldn't. Can you imagine being at your sister's lavish wedding, surrounded by 200 guests, when your own family demands you give up your home, and then your sister slaps you across the face? What would you do when everyone around you just starts to laugh? The sound of that slap still echoes in my mind, not just because it came from my own sister on her wedding day, but because of what happened after it. 200 guests, including my parents, erupted in laughter. That night, something in me snapped. I knew, right then, that I was going to choose a revenge that would silence them forever. Let me take you back to that evening. I'm Vivian, 32, and my life, well, it hasn't exactly been a fairy tale, but it's one I built with my own 2 hands. I stood there, a champagne flute trembling in my hand, watching my sister, Sabrina, glide across the Ritz-Carlton's ballroom floor. Her Vera Wang gown trailed behind her like liquid silk. 200 people were there to see her fairy tale wedding to Derek, an investment banker she'd met only 8 months prior. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was marrying for money while always wanting mine. See, while Sabrina was busy playing house with various lovers through her 20s, I was pulling all-nighters in law school, then clocking 70-hour weeks at a top Manhattan firm. 5 years ago, I took the biggest risk of my life, starting my own business litigation firm. It paid off spectacularly. Last year, I closed a settlement that allowed me to buy a penthouse overlooking Central Park. My sanctuary, my achievement, and apparently the target of my family's latest scheme. Vivian, darling, you look absolutely radiant. My mother, Diane, approached, her smile as phony as a $3 bill. The kind she only wore when she wanted something. Her silver hair was coiffed perfectly, and her navy dress probably cost more than most people's rent. We need to have a little family chat. My stomach sank. Hard. Family conversations in the Morrison household were never good news. Mom, it's Sabrina's wedding day. Can't whatever this is wait? Actually, no. My father, Robert, appeared beside her, his expression already harsh. At 58, Dad still commanded attention in his fitted tux, but his eyes held that familiar, lifelong disappointment he reserved just for me. We've been discussing your living situation. My living situation. I carefully set down my champagne, knowing I'd need both hands free for whatever was coming. What about my living situation? Well, honey, Mom's voice took on that sickeningly sweet tone. You know how Sabrina and Derek are starting their family? They're going to need more space than that tiny apartment Derek's been renting. I blinked. They're not even pregnant yet, Mom. But they will be soon. Sabrina's voice chimed, joining our little circle, her new husband's arm possessively around her waist. At 28, she was undeniably attractive with auburn hair and green eyes, but her calculating expression always made my skin crawl. We're planning to start trying right away. Congratulations, I murmured cautiously. I'm sure you'll find a lovely place to raise your family. We already have, Sabrina said, her smile bright, too bright. We want your penthouse. The words hit me like a physical blow. The air left my lungs. Excuse me. Now, Vivian, before you get all defensive. Dad jumped in, his voice adopting the patronizing tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. Think about this logically. You're a single woman. You don't need all that space. Sabrina and Derek, on the other hand, are starting a family. They need room for children, for their future. You want me to give up my home? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The home I had worked for years to afford. Not give up, Mom hastily corrected. Trade. You could take Derek's apartment. It's perfectly adequate for one person. A 600-square-foot studio in Queens. I asked, my voice flat. You want me to trade my 3-bedroom penthouse on the Upper West Side for a studio in Queens? Vivian, don't be so dramatic, Sabrina urged, rolling her eyes. It's not like you even use all that space. What do you need 3 bedrooms for? You don't even have a boyfriend. The comment stung, exactly as she intended. Sabrina had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. They hailed her bold for dropping out of college. My career changes were exploring her options. When I graduated summa cum laude from law school, they were concerned I'd worked too hard. I need those bedrooms because it's my home, I responded, my voice rising, an edge of desperation creeping in. I earned it. I paid for it. And I'm not giving it up. Vivian Elizabeth Morrison. Mom's voice hardened. That is incredibly selfish. Family comes first. Always. Family. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Have any of you ever treated me like family? When I needed help studying for the bar, you said I was being antisocial. When I started my own business and struggled, you accused me of being careless. When I finally succeeded, you pretended it was an accident. That's not true, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I pressed, a wave of old hurts washing over me. When was the last time any of you inquired about my life, my career, my happiness? But as soon as I have anything you desire, suddenly I'm family again. Sabrina stepped forward, her face turning crimson with rage. You know what your problem is, Vivian? You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm getting married, that I'm going to have the family you'll never have. I'm not jealous of you, Sabrina. I'm disappointed in you. Disappointed. She laughed, a nasty, brittle sound. Are you disappointed in me? I'm the one getting married. I'll be the one to give Mom and Dad grandkids. What have you done besides make money? I've built a life, I said softly but with steel. I've worked hard for everything I have. I've never asked any of you for anything. Well, now we're asking something of you, Dad stated firmly. Your sister needs that penthouse more than you do. It's time you did something for your family instead of just yourself. Robert's right. Mom's voice was shrill now. Selfish children don't deserve success. You've had everything handed to you, and now you won't even help your own sister. The accusation was so ludicrous I nearly snorted. Handed to me? I worked 3 jobs to pay for law school. I lived on ramen noodles for 2 years building my practice. I never asked them for a dime. Your sister's kids need real homes. Dad yelled, his voice carrying across the ballroom, causing several nearby guests to turn and stare. Not some cramped apartment. They deserve better. They're not even conceived yet. I protested, but I knew I was losing this battle. My family always excelled at making me feel bad about my accomplishments. Sabrina moved closer, her voice low and nasty, venomous. You know what, Vivian? I'm done pretending to care about your feelings. I've always known I was the better daughter. I'm prettier. I'm more likable. I'm the one who makes Mom and Dad proud. And now I'm finally getting what I've always deserved. The words hung in the air, a challenge. Wedding guests began to gather, sensing drama. Some were openly staring now, their conversations dying as they focused on our escalating family argument. What do you always deserve? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And what exactly is that, Sabrina? Everything, she replied simply. The penthouse, the respect, the life you've been hoarding for yourself. I deserve it all, and I'm finally going to get it. Over my dead body. The slap came so fast, I didn't see it coming. Sabrina's fingers cracked across my cheek with a piercing snap that rang out across the ballroom. For a brief, agonizing moment, the entire world seemed to stop. All 200 guests fell silent, their discussions broken mid-sentence, their heads swiveling to watch the spectacle. Then the laughter began. It started with a few scattered giggles from Sabrina's friends, who had always looked down on me for being too serious, too focused on work. But it spread like wildfire. Guests who didn't even know me were laughing, pointing, muttering behind their hands. Did you see that? She actually slapped her. About time someone put Vivian in her place. I always knew she was stuck up. My cheek burned, a searing sting, but no tears came. I would not give them that satisfaction. Instead, I stood there, feeling the pressure of 200 pairs of eyes, listening to their laughter, their whispered comments, their judgment. Sabrina smiled triumphantly. Maybe now you'll start acting like a real sister. Mom and Dad stood directly behind her. They didn't apologize. They didn't protect me. They just watched, waiting to see if I'd finally given. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the penthouse. This was about them keeping me in my place. A harsh, public reminder that no matter how successful I was, no matter how hard I worked, I would always be the disappointment, the one who didn't count. But they had made one critical error. They had humiliated me in front of 200 witnesses. And among those 200 were prominent figures from New York's legal and commercial circles. People who knew me, respected me, and knew exactly what I was capable of. My hand, remarkably steady despite the cold wrath coursing through my veins, reached into my bag. I pulled out my phone. Without speaking, I started typing. Vivian, what are you doing? Mom inquired uneasily. I ignored her, continuing to type. Around us, the laughter began to die down. People noticed I wasn't reacting as expected. I wasn't crying. I wasn't running away in humiliation. I was doing something else entirely. Vivian, put that away, Dad said, his voice strained. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I said quietly, still typing. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. Sabrina lunged, trying to grab my phone. But I sidestepped her, clicking send, just as her fingertips brushed the screen. What did you do? She hissed. I looked up at her, then at my parents, then at the multitude of guests still watching us with unsettling interest. I chose the revenge that would silence you forever. Their confused expressions were almost comical. They clearly expected me to either give in or burst into tears. They did not expect me to fight back. My phone buzzed. An answer, then another, then several more in rapid succession. Vivian, what did you send? Mom's voice became shrill, panic setting in. I gave the first genuine smile I'd felt all evening. I sent a message to my group chat. You know, the one with all my lawyer friends, the journalists I've worked with, the business contacts I've made over the years, the people who actually matter in this city. Sabrina's face turned white. What kind of message? Just a little update about tonight's events. How my family demanded I give up my penthouse to my sister and her new husband. How my mother screamed that selfish children don't deserve success. How my father said my sister's hypothetical children needed real homes more than I do. And how my sister slapped me in front of 200 people because I wouldn't hand over my life's work. The ballroom had gone utterly silent. Even the string quartet had ceased playing. I also mentioned how everyone laughed when I was assaulted. I added, my voice clear and audible over the hush, how amusing they found it that a successful woman was being put in her place by her family. Vivian, you need to delete that right now. Dad warned, his voice dangerously low. I shrugged. Delete what? The truth? Too late anyway. It's already been shared. You know how social media works, Dad. Once something's out there, it's out there forever. My phone was vibrating continuously now. Messages of sympathy, fury on my behalf, pleas for more information. The story was spreading faster than I'd expected. You vindictive witch. Sabrina screamed, her voice wavering slightly. No, Sabrina. I'm just done being your doormat. Derek, who had been mute through the entire argument, finally spoke up, his voice trembling. Vivian, maybe we can work something out. We didn't mean for things to go this far. I stared at him with pity. You married into the wrong family, Derek. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. What do you mean? He asked, his tone genuinely confused. I mean, your new wife and in-laws just made some very powerful enemies. Do you know who Judge Margaret Chin is? She was here tonight. She saw everything. She's already texted me, expressing her disgust at your wife's behavior. Sabrina's face went from white to green. Judge Chin was one of New York's most respected judges, known for having zero tolerance for entitled conduct. And David Rodriguez from the Times? He's been following me around all evening trying to get an interview about my latest case. He saw the whole thing. He's asking if I want to comment on how successful women are treated by their families. Vivian, stop. Mom urged, her voice a desperate whisper. You're going to ruin Sabrina's wedding. Sabrina ruined her own wedding when she decided to assault me in front of 200 people. It was just a slap. Sabrina insisted, tears welling in her eyes. You're being dramatic. It was an assault, Sabrina, and it was witnessed by 200 people, including several lawyers, a judge, and apparently a reporter. You want to know what I deserve? I deserve not to be physically attacked by my own family. My phone rang. I looked at the screen, and a slow smile spread across my face. Oh, this is interesting. It's Amanda Walsh from Walsh and Associates. You know, the law firm that handles high-profile reputation management cases. She's offering her services pro bono. Sabrina's face drained of what little blood was left. In New York society, reputation management was synonymous with controversy control. And if Amanda Walsh called, it meant the damage had already spread beyond our small circle. Vivian, please, Sabrina pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hit you. I was just emotional. You're sorry. I chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You're sorry that there are consequences to your actions. You're sorry that you can't just take whatever you want from me without pushback. But you're not sorry for what you did. I am sorry, she insisted. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone it was a mistake. Too late for that. The damage is done. And it was. I could see it on the faces of the people around us. The laughter had completely stopped, replaced by uneasy whispers and pointed stares. People who had previously found my humiliation humorous now looked at Sabrina with disgust. The social media posts had already gone viral, and in New York's affluent circles, reputation meant everything. What do you want? Dad said quietly, defeat evident in his voice. I want you to leave me alone, I stated plainly. All of you. I want you to stop treating me like an ATM. Stop expecting me to sacrifice my happiness for Sabrina's convenience. And stop pretending that family means anything to you beyond what you can get from me. Vivian, we're still family, Mom murmured softly, almost pleadingly. No, we're not. Family doesn't demand you give up your home. Family doesn't scream at you in public. Family doesn't assault you at a wedding. Family supports each other, celebrates each other's successes, and treats each other with respect. You've never done any of those things for me. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was an SMS from my assistant. Vivian, TMZ is calling. They want to know if you are the lawyer who was assaulted at the Ritz-Carlton wedding. What do I tell them? I held the phone up so everyone could see the message. TMZ is calling. This is about to become a very public story. Sabrina started crying, her perfect makeup running in black streaks down her cheeks. Vivian, please. This is my wedding day. Don't ruin it. I'm not ruining anything, Sabrina. I'm just refusing to be your victim anymore. What can we do? Derek asked, desperate now. How do we fix this? I looked at him, then at my parents, and finally at my sister, who was sobbing in her ruined wedding dress. You can't fix this, Derek. This is who they are. This is what they do. They take and take and take until there's nothing left. And when you finally say no, they attack you for it. The ballroom was beginning to empty. Guests were making excuses, slipping away from what was clearly a family catastrophe. Sabrina's beautiful wedding was unraveling, and everyone wanted to distance themselves from the chaos. The penthouse is mine, I said gently, but with absolute finality. I earned it. I paid for it, and I'm keeping it. If you want to live somewhere nice, Sabrina, get a job. Work for it like I did." "I can't believe you're doing this," she muttered, defeated. "I can't believe it took me this long." As I turned to leave, Dad grabbed my arm. "Vivian, wait. We can work this out. Family counseling, mediation, whatever you want." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up to his face. "Let go of me, Dad." He quickly released me, clearly aware of the consequences of physically restraining me after what had just happened. "There's nothing to work out. You made your choice tonight. You chose Sabrina over me, just like you always have. You chose her convenience over my hard work. You chose her demands over my boundaries. And when I said no, you chose to watch her assault me rather than defend me. We didn't know she was going to hit you. Mom insisted, but you didn't stop her. You didn't apologize. You didn't even check if I was okay. You just stood there and let it happen." I started walking towards the exit, my heels clicking across the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear Sabrina's heartbroken weeping, Mom's frantic murmurs, and Dad's angry mumbling. But I did not glance back. At the door, I turned one last time. The once grand ballroom now resembled the site of a calamity. Wedding attendees were separated into tiny groups, whispering and pointing. The bride cried in her destroyed makeup. The groom looked stunned. My parents were attempting to contain the damage that was already spiraling out of hand. "You know what the funny thing is?" I exclaimed, my voice echoing around the virtually empty room. "I would have helped you if you'd asked nicely. If you'd come to me with respect, if you treated me like family instead of like a bank account, I would have helped you find a nice place to live. I might have even helped with the down payment." The hush that followed was deafening. "But you didn't ask for help. You demanded my home. You screamed at me, insulted me, and then physically attacked me when I said no. So now, you get nothing." I walked out of the Ritz-Carlton with my head held high, leaving behind the devastation of my sister's wedding and my family's reputation. The elevator ride down seemed interminable. As the doors closed, I could still hear the muffled voices and crying from the ballroom. My phone hadn't stopped vibrating since I sent that message, and with each notification, I felt a strange combination of relief and dread. The lobby was blessedly quiet. The night manager, a distinguished gentleman in his 50s, approached me, his face etched with concern. "Ms. Morrison, is everything all right? We heard there was some commotion upstairs." I paused. Even the hotel staff knew. "I'm fine, thank you. Just family drama." He nodded politely, but I could see the interest in his eyes. By tomorrow, this story would have traveled through the hotel's staff gossip network and across other luxury establishments in the city. In New York's aristocratic circles, scandals spread like wildfire. Outside, the crisp October air hit my face like a slap. Odd, given I'd already been slapped once tonight. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching the traffic flow along Central Park South, trying to process everything that had just happened. Part of me couldn't believe I'd done it. The other part of me questioned why it had taken this long. My phone rang. It was Riley, my dearest friend, a prosecutor I'd met in my first year at the firm. "Vivian, what the hell is going on? I just saw your group message. And now there are photos all over Instagram. Did Sabrina really hit you?" She did. I started walking towards the subway, needing to move, to burn off the adrenaline still pouring through my veins. "Holy SHT. Are you okay? Do you want me to come over?" "I'm fine, Jess. Actually, I'm better than fine. I think I'm finally free. Free. Free from pretending they're actually my family. Free from feeling guilty about my success. Free from walking on eggshells every time I'm around them." There was a pause on the other end. "Vivian, you know this is going to get messy, right? Like really messy." "I know, but I'm tired of being the one who always has to clean up their messes. Let them figure it out for once. What about your parents? They're going to be devastated." I stopped walking. Jess, they stood there and watched their daughter assault me in public. They demanded I give up my home for their golden child. They called me selfish for wanting to keep what I've worked for. When exactly am I supposed to start caring about their feelings? You're right, she replied gently. I'm sorry. I know how much family means to you. Family means everything to me, but they stopped being my family a long time ago. I was just too blind to see it. After hanging up with Riley, I decided to walk home instead of taking the subway. I needed time to reflect, to comprehend what had just happened and what was likely to happen next. The 40-block stroll from Midtown to my Upper West Side condo would allow me that time. As I walked, my phone continued to vibrate. Some messages were from co-workers who had attended the wedding, expressing their shock and support. Others were from friends who had seen the message circulating on social media. A handful were from journalists who had somehow gotten my number and wanted quotes. The most startling message came from Patricia Winters, a senior partner at my old firm. We'd parted on good terms when I left to start my own practice, but we rarely spoke anymore. Vivian, I only just found out about this tonight. I want you to know you have my full support. What happened to you was terrible, and I applaud you for sticking up for yourself. Please call if you have any questions. Reading her message, tears finally welled to my eyes for the first time all evening. Not tears of anguish or pain, but tears of gratitude. Here was someone who barely knew my family and had no obligation to help me. Yet she offered it because it was the right thing to do. It made me understand how wrong my family had been about me. They painted me as a selfish person who only cared about money and achievement. But the messages flooding my phone painted a different narrative. They came from people who knew the real me, the person who mentored younger associates, did pro bono work for victims of domestic violence, and volunteered at legal aid clinics despite working 80-hour weeks. By the time I reached my building, I had over 200 messages and missed calls. My doorman, Luis, stared at me with alarm as I walked into the lobby. Miss Vivian, you okay? You look like you've had a tough night. Luis had been in my building for 15 years. He'd seen me through law school stress, relationship breakups, career changes, and countless late nights. He knew me better than my family ever did. I've had better nights, Luis, I admitted, a small smile touching my lips. But I think things are going to get better from here. He smiled back. That's good to hear. You deserve all the happiness in the world. In the elevator, I finally allowed myself to look closely at my reflection in the mirrored walls. My cheek was still crimson from Sabrina's hit. My hair was a bit unkempt, my makeup smudged, but my eyes were bright, focused, and, dare I say it, triumphant. I looked like someone who had been through battle and emerged victorious. As I entered my apartment, it felt like a haven. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, lights glittering like stars. This was my space, my accomplishment, my home, and no one was going to take it away. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, finally allowing myself to sift through the incident-related social media posts. Someone had filmed Sabrina smacking me, perhaps thinking it was humorous at the time, and posted it to Instagram. The video had already been shared hundreds of thousands of times, and comments ranged from indignation to support. This is disgusting. Who hits someone at a wedding? That lawyer is my hero for refusing to back down. The sister is certainly entitled AF. Family or not, assault is assault. I can't believe everyone was laughing. What is wrong with people? It wasn't just random internet users commenting, either. I recognized names from New York's legal community, business heavyweights, and even a few celebrities who had reportedly watched the clip. The narrative was taking on a life of its own, reaching well beyond Sabrina's wedding. The phone rang again. This time it was my assistant, Jenna, calling from her personal phone. Vivian, I'm so sorry to bother you on a Saturday night, but I've been getting calls all evening. The office voicemail is full, and reporters keep calling my personal line asking for statements. What kind of reporters? Everyone. Local news, page 6, TMZ, even CNN. This story is everywhere. I close my eyes, suddenly fatigued. What are they asking? They want to know if you're pressing charges, if you're planning to sue, what your family relationship was like before this. Some are asking about your law practice and your success story. A few want to know about your dating life. Of course they did. A successful single woman being attacked by her married sister. A common theme in stories about women, success, and family dynamics. Jenna, I need you to draft a statement. Keep it simple and professional. Something like, MS Morrison is grateful for the outpouring of support she's received. She's focusing on her work and her clients at this time and won't be making any further public comments about this private family matter. Should I mention anything about pressing charges? I paused. The truth was, I hadn't even considered filing charges. Sabrina's smack had been intended to humiliate rather than cause bodily harm. But Jenna's question made me realize I had possibilities I hadn't yet considered. Don't mention charges either way. Let's keep our options open. After hanging up with Jenna, I realized I was starving. I hadn't eaten anything at the wedding, too apprehensive about the impending family clash. I ordered Thai food and settled in to properly explore the consequences of tonight's occurrences. By late that evening, the tale had gained significant popularity on social media. The Instagram video of the slap had been shared by countless gossip accounts, racking up millions of views within hours. More intriguing were the lengthy articles already being published about the tragedy. A feminist blogger wrote about how women are expected to compromise their success for their families. A family therapist wrote about toxic family dynamics. A legal expert was discussing New York's assault statutes. My story had grown beyond just family drama. It sparked broader conversations about success, gender, family expectations, and standing up for oneself. Sabrina's Instagram account, which had been filled with wedding photographs and jubilation just hours before, was now inundated with angry comments. People called her entitled, abusive, and spoiled. Her wedding hashtag Sabrina and Derek Forever, was ironically being used to broadcast the video of her hitting me. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered her triumphant expression as she smacked me, the way she sneered at finally receiving what she deserved. And my sympathy fled. My dinner arrived, and as I ate the pad thai, I started receiving calls from unexpected sources. My college roommate, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, called to express her support. A cousin on my father's side, who had always been the family's black sheep, contacted me to discuss her own experiences with mistreatment by relatives. Even my high school guidance counselor, who had obviously seen the article on Facebook, called to express her pride in how far I had come. But the most meaningful call came from Judge Margaret Chin, who had attended the wedding. Vivian, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the court directory. I wanted to personally apologize for what I witnessed tonight. Judge Chin, you don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. I should have intervened. I should have said something when I saw what was happening. Instead, I just stood there like everyone else. You were a guest at a wedding, not a referee at a family fight. Perhaps, but I've been thinking about it all evening, and I keep coming back to something. That wasn't just family drama, Vivian. That was a pattern of abuse. Emotional abuse, financial abuse, and then physical abuse. I've seen it too many times in my courtroom. Her comments struck me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on the slap and the demands for my penthouse that I hadn't given much thought to the wider picture. But she was right. This was more than just one awful night. This was the culmination of years of my family treating me like a personal ATM, disregarding my accomplishments and making me feel bad about my success. I never thought of it that way, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Abuse isn't always obvious, especially when it's coming from family. We're conditioned to accept behavior from relatives that we'd never tolerate from strangers. But what I saw tonight, the financial demands, the public humiliation, the physical violence, that's a textbook case of family abuse. After I hung up with Judge Chin, I sat in my apartment for a long time, reflecting on her words. Had I actually been abused by my family? It seemed like too strong a word. They had never hit me until tonight. They had never intimidated me or tried to control my daily life. But they had consistently attacked my accomplishments, made me feel guilty about my success, and asked me to sacrifice my happiness for Sabrina's convenience. They treated me like a bank account, not a daughter or a sister. And when I eventually said no, they publicly ridiculed and physically assaulted me. Maybe Judge Chin was right. Perhaps this was abuse, but in a form I hadn't recognized. The understanding was simultaneously empowering and painful. It felt liberating because it validated that I had made the correct decision to end my relationship with them. Heartbreaking because it meant admitting that my family had never truly loved me. They just adored what I could offer them. As the night progressed, I found myself feeling almost glad for Sabrina's slap. It had been the wake-up call I needed, the final straw that gave me the strength to stop enabling their actions. Without it, I might have continued to be their doormat for years. By 2 a.m., I was exhausted yet surprisingly calm. I had disabled my phone alerts to stop the continual buzzing and was getting ready for bed when I heard the building's intercom. I looked at the camera monitor and saw Sabrina standing outside, still in her bridal dress, mascara smeared down her cheeks. She looked up at the camera and mouthed, "Please." I wavered for a second. She looked shattered and desperate. Despite everything, the sister I'd grown up with was standing outside my building, screaming for help in her damaged wedding dress. Then I remembered her triumphant expression after she had hit me. I remembered her saying that she deserved everything I had worked for. I remembered 200 people laughing as I stood there, shamed and alone. I switched off the monitor and went to bed. The story appeared on page 6 the next morning. Lawyer assaulted by sister at Ritz wedding, read the headline, accompanied by a photograph of Sabrina smacking me. The story detailed the entire affair, from my family's demands for my penthouse to the assault in front of 200 people. By lunchtime, it was trending on social media. The hashtags #weddingassault and #toxicfamilygrief went viral, with thousands of people sharing their own tales of entitled family members and supporting my decision to fight back. That afternoon, Sabrina's new mother-in-law called to cancel her invitation to the family Christmas celebration. Derek's legal business conducted an internal investigation after many clients voiced worry about his involvement in the incident. Mom and Dad's Country club membership was quietly paused pending review. The revenge I chose was neither violent nor criminal. It was just the truth, amplified by the power of social media and the relationships I had spent years cultivating. Sometimes the most devastating weapon is simply showing others who someone truly is. Sabrina called me a week later, crying and pleading with me to help them control the damage. She'd been fired from her job at a boutique public relations agency when clients began canceling their contracts. Derek was about to undergo a professional ethics assessment. Their honeymoon was cut short when paparazzi began following them. "Vivian, please," she sobbed into her phone. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." "You meant to humiliate me," I answered gently. "You meant to force me to give up my home. You meant to put me in my place in front of 200 people. The only thing you didn't mean was to face consequences for it. I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone I was wrong. Sabrina, stop." I was sitting in my penthouse, admiring the view of Central Park that I had fought so hard for. You can't apologize your way out of this. You can't take back what you did, and you can't force me to forgive you just because you're finally facing consequences. "But we're family," she muttered, her voice broken. "Family doesn't assault each other, Sabrina. Family doesn't demand sacrifices they're not willing to make themselves. Family doesn't laugh when one of their own is humiliated. I know I messed up, but please help me fix this." "I can't fix this for you. This is something you have to live with." She hung up, crying, and I never heard from her again. 6 months later, Sabrina and Derek divorced. The stress of the incident, along with the financial strain of both losing their jobs, had ended their marriage before it had even truly begun. Sabrina returned to live with our parents, who were experiencing their own social exile. Dad's business struggled as clients distanced themselves from the family, which had become synonymous with entitlement and selfishness. Meanwhile, my practice flourished. The attention, while initially unsettling, eventually worked in my favor. I became known as the lawyer who refused to be intimidated, who stuck up for herself, even if it meant standing alone. New clients sought me out specifically because they had heard about my refusal to back down. I never got my family back, but then I realized I hadn't truly had them to begin with. I had a group of people who regarded me as a resource to be used, rather than a person to be appreciated. Naturally, I retained ownership of the penthouse. I eventually turned one of the extra bedrooms into a home office and the other into a guest room for my closest friends. The space Sabrina had claimed I didn't need was filled by the relationships I formed with people who respected me for who I was, rather than what I could provide them. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently. If there was a way to keep my boundaries without hurting my family's reputation so profoundly. But then I remember the sound of that slap booming throughout the ballroom, the sickening laughter of 200 people, and Sabrina's triumphant expression when she thought she had won. I chose the revenge that would permanently silence them, and it worked. They never asked me for anything else. Even though it was unexpected, the silence was just what I had hoped for. In the end, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at someone. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let them get away with it. Sometimes it's standing up and saying, "No, you don't get to treat me like this anymore." And sometimes that's enough to shift everything. What would you have done in my place when your own family betrayed you so publicly? Have you ever had to choose between your self-worth and someone else's twisted idea of family? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.